That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we have the dust settling from the NFL draft. We have players skyrocketing in value, and I'm going to take an in-depth look on some of these wide receivers that I am personally lower on compared to the overall market. Now, not all these players have exponentially increased in value. There'll actually be one guy that has lost value since the NFL draft, but I'm saying, you know what? He needs to go way further down rankings. So of course, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Leave a comment letting me know what I am missing with one of these players. And yeah, we should just go right into this and bring up our first wide receiver. Now, I hate to do this because you know I have spent pretty much every single second of my waking life over the past month researching rookies, talking rookies. I know I am tired of talking about the same names over and over and over again. I'm sure you're tired of hearing of those names, but Jameson Williams is a player that if I'm pulling up my rankings and I'm comparing these to keep trade cut, I honestly think that keep trade cuts way too high on him. I mean, this is a wide receiver that I personally have as the wide receiver 26. I know that sounds low. I know it sounds low to have him as that low end wide receiver 3, but if you just look at some of the names that is going around Jameson Williams right now in fantasy, I don't necessarily think it makes sense with where he is currently ranked. This is a wide receiver that lands in a horrendous situation, lands with the Detroit Lions. And I know we have a lot of people getting upset with me talking about this Detroit Lions situation being bad. And I will say, if we were playing Madden, I mean, yes, Detroit building correctly, great offensive line. I mean, Jameson Williams is a perfect fit on this team. I want to say that. I want to be very clear about it, that I think if we're looking at the Detroit Lions roster, Jameson Williams is a square piece and fitting right into that square hole. I mean, it is natural. He's going to be the field stretching option for a team that needed speed. They went out there and signed DJ Chark, but he's just a significantly better version of DJ Chark, but still good offensive line. Great pick with Jameson Williams. They have a great slot receiver with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have one of the best tight ends in the NFL with TJ Hawkinson. They also have one of the better running backs in the NFL with DeAndre Swift. This is a team that's building everything the correct way. But one thing that has taken me so long to learn in Dynasty Fantasy Football, that I personally have made this mistake over and over again, is this isn't Madden. It's not as simple as just going out there and constructing a team of good players. Those good players have to be in a good system. And Detroit is the exact opposite of that, to the furthest extreme. This is a team that has been dysfunctional for years now. And for ownership to be able to clean house, to be able to go through and clear out everybody in the front office, bring in a good coaching staff, it is so much easier said than done. So despite this Detroit Lions offense looking great on paper, with a coaching staff we're unsure about, with the historical disappointment of this offense, and on top of this, with Jared Goff being a very bad NFL quarterback, I'm sorry to say it, but this is a horrendous landing spot. And if we're going over and looking at Jameson Williams right now on Keep Trade Cut, this is a wide receiver that is currently the wide receiver 18. The wide receiver 18. He's going ahead of players like Jerry Judy. He's going ahead of someone like Chris Olave still. I don't know how at this point you're taking Jameson Williams over Chris Olave. He's going ahead of Hollywood Brown, Mike Evans, Elijah Moore, Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin, Rashad Bateman. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of those guys should be drafted ahead of Jameson Williams. Please do not think that I am saying that. But what I am saying is I think the expectations from a fantasy football standpoint honestly aren't going to line up with his real life NFL value. And another thing we need to discuss here is that target competition in Detroit. Not only is this a bad offense overall, but on top of this, it's a team with a lot of talent. As we've already discussed, you have Hawkinson, who's most likely going to be the red zone weapon. You have DeAndre Swift, who will be taking a higher percentage of this team's target share than the majority of other NFL running backs. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we saw at the end of last season, has his own capability of commanding a ton of volume in this offense, particularly from the slot. So if we're expecting this to be a bad team, we're expecting that the skill positional players around Jameson Williams are pretty freaking good. I don't get this. Like, Jerry Judy is a player that's going behind Jameson Williams right now that I'm easily preferring Jerry Judy. I think Jameson Williams probably the slightly better prospect, but if you're looking at the situation in Denver, in my opinion, I know people are going to hate me for saying this because everybody loves Courtland Sutton. There's less target competition in Denver, and you have Russell Wilson there. Now, one thing I will say is, my favorite thing to do is go over to Underdog Fantasy, check out what the real money drafters are saying. Check out what people are actually thinking about Jameson Williams for 2022, because his 2022 value will affect his dynasty value 100%. I know people want to act like dynasty, oh, we're just drafting these players 5 years down the road. Well, if this player is going to have a very bad rookie season, just buy him on the cheap next year. And with Jameson Williams, he's going very high in underdog drafts. I mean, this is a wide receiver that is going directly after Garrett Wilson back-to-back. I mean, Treylon Burks is only going half a round over Jameson Williams on underdog fantasy right now. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I am understating the level of prospect that Jameson Williams truly is. Maybe this is a situation where the talent is just too much and he's able to overcome this situation. Like I've said, I'm still keeping him in the tier above guys like Sky Moore, Christian Watson that landed in fantastic landing spots. But if we're comparing him to veterans like Jerry Judy, if we are going to be comparing him to someone like Chris Olave, who I like more coming into the draft, I'm personally going to be going ahead and selling Jameson Williams. But before we move on, let's revisit Underdog Fantasy. On Underdog Fantasy, you can go and get into some 2022 real money best ball drafts right now. And when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, you can draft with us in the live stream. Go draft a league in a public lobby. Go draft a league with your friends. You can do whatever you want over there. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they'll match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And on top of this, most importantly, you'll get our dynasty rankings. You'll get our dynasty rookie rankings. You will get our 2022 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, well over 100 pages. I believe like almost 140 pages of quality information on this year's rookie class, where we're able to talk in much more detail about the player that Jameson Williams is. But let's move on to our second name, and this is a wide receiver that should be a loser. I have no idea what is going on with Keep Trade Cut right now. I do not know how his value has not fallen through the floor. Devonte Smith. This is a wide receiver on Keep Trade Cut, the wide receiver 22. And if you're looking at my dynasty rankings, I know I'm low. Trust me, I get it. But I have him as the wide receiver 30. And I honestly don't think this is too bad of a thing, because if we go back and you look at Devonte Smith last season, this is a wide receiver that was set up for success in Philadelphia. This is a wide receiver that was competing for targets with Jalen Reagor, with Quez Watkins, and that's it at the wide receiver position. And he came out and he was the wide receiver 39 on a points per game standpoint. Now, of course, there are going to be a couple different things going on here. I'm not ranking him as the wide receiver 39 this upcoming season. I'm ranking him higher than that, even though his situation has gotten worse, because you can naturally assume that Jalen Hurts is going to take a step forward as a year 2 starter. We can naturally assume that Devonte Smith himself will take a step forward as a year 2 NFL player. So with that natural progression, I think a lot of people want to go back to the prospect he was coming out of Alabama and want to get too excited about Devonte Smith, despite how this situation is just significantly worse than what it was a year ago, because this upcoming season, Devonte Smith is going to have serious target competition in Philadelphia. You have A.J. Brown coming over. You have Dallas Goedert going into his prime. You have Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell as running backs that can catch passes out of the backfield. So if we go through and we try to project some target shares for this offense, I'm going to be saying this, and I don't think this is controversial at all. Once they go out there and pay A.J. Brown $100 million, we can assume A.J. Brown's the wide receiver 1 on this team. Can we all get on the same page with that? And also, if we go over and try to have an understanding of how that wide receiver 1 role will affect the other pieces in this offense, there's going to be a large chunk of this offensive pie taken out from A.J. Brown. He is not just a wide receiver 1. He is an alpha. He is a dominant wide receiver 1. If we go back to this past season in Tennessee, yeah, A.J. Brown, he was only the wide receiver 26 on a per game basis. That's not great by any means. But we need to look under the hood for his opportunity. And here, he averaged 25%, almost 26% of the team's targets on a per-game basis in Tennessee. So you are automatically signing up to give 1/4 of this target share to A.J. Brown in Philadelphia. Now, maybe you assume, hell, there's going to be more target competition in Philly. Hell, Devonte Smith is a lot better than the wide receiver 2 for Tennessee last year. Let's assume that A.J. Brown has a smaller piece of the pie. Let's assume he goes down to 23, 24%, which is entirely possible. I'd probably say that's going to happen based on the other options in Philadelphia. But when you have that wide receiver taking such a large piece away, the issue is, how big is that pie to begin with? Because if you're in the Kansas City Chiefs offense where, yeah, you have Travis Kelce potentially getting 22, 23% of the team's target share there this upcoming season, there's still more than enough production to go around because that offense is going to be near the top of the NFL with their passing volume, near the top of the NFL with their passing yards, passing touchdowns, and overall completions. The issue is in Philadelphia. That's simply not the case. If we go through and look at how bad this passing offense was last year, there were only three teams that had more passing yards than the Philadelphia Eagles. You had the New Orleans Saints. Think about the wide receivers for the New Orleans Saints last year. You had the New York Giants, and you had the Carolina Panthers. Those were the three passing offenses worse than the Philadelphia Eagles. And we need to ask ourselves, okay, is this because the Philadelphia Eagles simply couldn't pass? Is it because a coaching decision that maybe this team wants to be built around the run? What is going on? Because I would assume that if we are wanting to take a step up from Devonte Smith in this overall passing offense, what we would want to see is that they were trying to throw the ball, that they were going out there giving Jalen Hurts every chance he had with a drop back, and they wanted to rack up pass attempts. And the issue was, Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins, they just weren't good enough to allow this offense to thrive throwing the ball. No, that wasn't the case at all. The actual case here is this team was dead last in the NFL with their pass attempts. Now, of course, this should change this upcoming season. With A.J. Brown coming in, with Jalen Hurts taking that year 2 jump, I am going to be the first person to say, yes, this will be a better passing offense than it was last year. Instead of being dead last in the NFL in pass attempts, what if they're 22nd? What if they're 23rd? What if they take that massive jump up and jump about 10 teams in the standing? I think that should almost be the projection. But still, going back to the overall issue, we can acknowledge that this passing offense is a smaller pie than most other teams in the NFL. And A.J. Brown is going to be taking a larger piece of that pie than most other wide receiver ones in the NFL. And if we add in the fact that they have other weapons like a capable tight end, like capable pass catching running backs, I am worried about Devonte Smith. Like if we go over and if we compare him to some wide receivers going behind him, on keep trade cut compared to our dynasty rankings. I hate to do this, but let's go right back to Jerry Judy. Right back to Judy. Because right now, on keep trade cut, Devonte Smith has fallen down 11 spots, and he is still 2 wide receiver slots higher than Jerry Judy. And with Judy, he is younger than Devonte Smith, which is funny to talk about because obviously Judy came out 2020, Devonte Smith in 2021. But Jerry Judy is younger. And at the same time, he is going to be a part of a much better offense in Denver. He is going to have a much better offensive pie to take a slice of. And on top of this, he's not competing with A.J. Brown for targets. He is instead competing with Courtland Sutton. And I hate to be the wet blanket for all the Courtland Sutton truthers, how I've been for years. But A.J. Brown is a significantly better receiver than Courtland Sutton. So give me Jerry Judy, a wide receiver in a better offense with less target competition. That's younger. That was a similar prospect coming out. I feel like this isn't rocket science. And now going over to our next option, we are going to have Rashad Bateman. And here with Rashad Bateman, I understand everybody wants to just crown him, and you have Hollywood Brown leaving. There are a lot of targets available. And I will admit, that's one thing that I did not initially think of. And that was the amount of volume that Hollywood Brown was commanding in Baltimore. Like you think of Hollywood Brown, at least I think of Hollywood Brown, I think of a speedy field stretching wide receiver that's not necessarily going to go out there and get a ton of targets. Hollywood had 9 targets a game last season. he had that same target share as A.J. Brown. He was hovering around 25%. So with Hollywood Brown leaving this overall offense, I'll agree with you. I think that this is going to be a situation where way more targets are available for Rashad Bateman. Now, my personal issue is the discrepancy that we are going to see with where Hollywood Brown draws targets on the football field compared to Rashad Bateman. I don't necessarily think these two wide receivers play similar roles in their respective offenses. If we think of Rashad Bateman, this is a wide receiver that's going to be running more slant routes. This is a wide receiver that's going to be more so over the middle of the field. Where Hollywood Brown excelled was stretching this offense. So it's not like Rashad Bateman's going to inherently just slide into this Hollywood Brown role and take over that 25% team target share. Instead, Rashad Bateman's role is going to most likely remain the same. Now, you'll have a speedy wide receiver coming in Baltimore. Maybe that's Devon Duvernay to take over for Hollywood Brown. And of course, I don't think Devon Duvernay all of a sudden is going to get 9 targets a game. I'm just saying the role itself for Bateman doesn't change. While yes, he will be able to draw more targets on a per game basis because Devon Duvernay is a significant downgrade. But I'm also expecting that this Baltimore Ravens offense takes a significant step back with their passing volume compared to where they were last year. This was an outlier season for the Baltimore Ravens. If we just pull up their pass attempts, they had 611 pass attempts this past season. If we take a step back to 2020, this was a team that was down there at 406. In 2020, the Baltimore Ravens had 406 pass attempts. This is still a team that wants to run the ball. So I will admit that out of that offensive pie we keep talking about, Bateman is going to get a larger slice of it. But I'm expecting that this overall passing offense actually scales back as they try to run the ball more effectively when they add back in J.K. Dobbins, when they add back in Gus Edwards. Think about the running backs that they had in this offense this time last year. And the issue is last season, they're not going to go out there and skew to be as run heavy as they would like to be. If you're running it with Devonte Freeman, if you're running it with Le'Veon Bell, that's not going to be effective. You are not going to be an efficient running team. And if we also go over to Underdog Fantasy right now and we look at what they are telling us with how we should be valuing these players, like I said, we're not basing everything off of this, but it is a good, at least baseline to have an understanding of where real money drafts are taking someone like Rashad Bateman. There, he's going as the wide receiver 37. Now, I will say that is way too low for Rashad Bateman. He should be going up that draft board. My issue is, however, is if we're just looking at this offense, I don't think the passing volume is going to be there, and it's going to be very similar to the Philadelphia Eagles, just like we got done talking about Devonte Smith. If we're expecting this offensive pie to be small for the passing attack in particular, we're going to be a great rushing team. But if we're expecting this offensive pie to be small, what we need to see is we need to see you be Terry McLaurin from years past. We need to see you get to that elite level target share. And who do you have in Baltimore to be the actual number one receiving option? The actual number one receiving option is going to be Mark Andrews. So I'm not expecting that Bateman's able to step into a Hollywood Brown role, command 25% of this team's target share. And even if he were to be able to do that, I would assume that the ceiling is going to be inherently lower on a player like Bateman, a part of this offense, compared to what you would find with, I hate to bring it up, Jerry Judy, going way ahead of Jerry Judy in Dynasty drafts, despite Jerry Judy playing in a better offense, having arguably less target competition, and being a comparable wide receiver with his talent profile. So I hate to continue to do this, to continue to attack these wide receivers that are in bad passing offenses, but as I've said time and time again, you can easily 100% get away with being in a bad passing offense overall. You can get away with being with the Detroit Lions. You can get away with being a Philadelphia Eagle, with a Baltimore Raven. Now, I'm going to say Eagles, Ravens, good NFL teams, not good passing offenses. But you can get away with that if you are going to be the unquestioned wide receiver one on that team. But as soon as you step into a role where you are the second option, where you step into the role where you're the second player in that target totem pole, there's not enough offensive production to go around to give you access to an elite level ceiling. That's why I'm going to prefer to take a wide receiver 2 that's a part of a much better, a much more efficient passing offense if they have a comparable talent profile and are either the same age or younger. Now, I hope we didn't just ramble on for 20 minutes here. I hope that was able to help someone. If it did, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And of course, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK if you have not already. Go get our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. And I think that should be it. I hope you have a great day, and I truly do appreciate you.